And move the flags. So we go this way for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Establish a quorum. Grady? Here. Marilyn? Todd? Here. Bill? Here. Stan? Here. Done. We're all here. Okay. Tonight's meeting is primarily and almost exclusively budget meeting. It's not a regular board meeting. We do have two other topics. So we're going to go. First, I want to. You've all seen the minutes of the meeting on December 15th. I have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes from December 15th. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. A motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on December 20th.
Motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we go right into, we're not going to join any reports, right, because of the special meeting. We're going to reserve assessment option review from Bill.
Okay. All right.
Do you want us, is it going to be up here?
Yeah, but it's the same thing that you got in front of you.
I know, it says about the way.
Okay. So, this meeting is a follow-up to our meeting of December 13th, when we reviewed the budget, and on the 15th, when it was presented to the board for review. All documents related to the operating budget are still available on Town Square at Sandoval Budget. Since the proposals were made back on the 13th of December and submitted to the board on December 15th, there have been no changes to the operating portion of the budget. So the operating expenses and assessments and recommended assessments for covering those operating expenses have remained the same. So rather than kill a lot of trees to regurgitate those same documents, nothing's changed since December. At this time, we highlighted that the reserve study that we had commissioned for our charter, we identified that we have a funding shortfall in the out years, primarily driven by the need to redo the roads when they reach their 25-year life. We did propose some changes to the 23 budget to fill up that gap. The proposal that we made back on December 13th was to increase what's called the initial assessment, or what I'm now calling the sales transaction or change of ownership transaction assessment, from $3,000 to $5,000. In preparation for today's meeting, we had a lot of discussion at that board meeting on December 15th. The board requested that we go look at different funding options to make sure that we exhausted all the different possibilities for filling the gap. One of the first things we did was consult with legal counsel to determine if we could use a formula based on percentage of sale, differentiate between a sale of a condo, sale of a villa, sale of a standalone house, and we got a very quick response back from our lawyer saying that it would be a violation of Florida law to differentiate fees based on type of domicile. Additionally, he highlighted that there would be issues with trying to do a closing transaction if you did it as a percentage of sales. So as the finance committee reviewed it, we decided to just go for a straight fixed amount approach for filling the gap. So based on the guidance from legal counsel, what we did is we looked at 4 options for funding the reserve account going forward. The first one is to do nothing. It sort of kicks the can down the road. The second one is to increase the assessment from $3,000 to $5,000. That was what was proposed back in December. The third option was a hybrid option, was to keep the initial sales transaction at $3,000 and add an assessment of $156 per year per homeowner to fill the gap. The fourth option was to increase the revenue assessment to $4,000, and then the per homeowner assessment would be $78 a year. So this next chart is pretty busy, but what we did was we took the same reserve spend over the next 15 years, same set of assumptions, so it's always an apples and apples comparison. And what we looked at, what these four options would be. In option one, we still see that there is still a gap in funding as we get in the out years. Option two, which was essentially what was presented back in December, ends up with a projected balance of about $2.5 million. So the goal was for options 3 or 4 to end up with that same amount, that same target balance for the reserve funds 15 years from now. And that's how we work backwards to get to the two numbers. So option 3 shows the funding based on no change to the sales transaction assessment, and then going to $176. Then option 4 is increasing the assessment to $4,000, and then the per year assessment is $78. After we went back and forth and reviewed it, the Finance Committee, we had a very vigorous discussion about back and forth. The Finance Committee is recommending that the board accept option 4 as the going forward plan for funding the reserve account going forward. Now how that impacts the budget, because, so what we have on the next chart is what the budget would look like based on all 4 options. You'll see that there's no change in the operating income, no change in the operating expenses. There is a change in the top line number associated with the monies collected by the various reserve funding options. And you'll see other expenses shows where the money would flow from the from being received into the operating account being transferred to the Fifth Third account for our reserve funds. The next chart reviews the assessment proposals, and I'll just concentrate on option 4 at this point. So in option 4, what you would be seeing is that the community total assessment, which would be $595 plus $19.50 on a quarterly basis, would up the quarterly payments to $614.50. And there obviously will be no change in the landscape assessment for those homeowners that pay for landscape. So one of the things we talked about in the December meeting is that we are, for the first quarter, because we are running late with the process, we are collecting in Q1 the same amounts that were charged in Q4 last year. So what I've shown in this chart is what the remaining payments would be for Q2, Q3, and Q4 based on options 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what you're looking at, again focusing on option 4, is that the payment for the base assessment payment would rise to $642.67 for the remaining 3 quarters. And the landscape assessment would go to $464.62 for the remaining 3 quarters. And then there's a total of $1,107.28 for those that have both the base assessment and the landscape assessment. And that is and so the recommendation is to approve the proposed budget and to adopt option 4 for the reserve fund. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the budget as presented to the board, and a second motion to approve option 4.
We'll take one at a time.
Okay.
Okay, first, this is on now. Can you hear me? Okay. The first one is to approve the budget.
The operating budget.
Do I hear a second? Second. Discussion. Aaron? Sam? Okay. All those in favor of approving the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. You want to make the second motion?
The motion I'd like to make is we adopt option 4, which is to increase the reserve assessment from $3,000 to $4,000, and then to charge on a yearly basis $78 per homeowner to institute the reserve assessment with the homeowners. I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Let's have a discussion.
Under discussion.
Yes.
I'm hoping that this doesn't hurt our sales, but when you look at the 3,000 assessment, that's been for at least 5 years. So it probably should have been increased every year so that it's not such a big jump. That didn't happen, and we have to cover the reserves, and the reserves affect every individual who lives here. So consequently, it's a fair process, and I hope everyone understands.
You know which one? The one we're on the table now is $4,000
I know.
plus $78.
$78.
Now, prior to, I guess, yesterday, I was favoring the 5,000 and not having individual. There's some risk in that, and that until the market recovers, we're going to have lower sales for a while. So getting us accustomed to actually paying into reserve accounts, I think is a financially healthy thing for us to do. So I support this motion. Any other discussion?
I would just like to add that the option 3 and option 4 both are palatable to me, but I think the option 4 is probably the easiest compromise from, I hate to say, like a popularity perspective. But we've got several issues that aren't apparent in these numbers. We haven't had an increase in dues in quite some time. We're seeing inflation at the front door. We've had a horrible time with the hurricane recovery. I know nobody ever wants to hear that money is going to be asked of us, but when I'm looking at $39 per quarter or $19 per quarter for 1 year, I don't have a problem with either of those options. I would support option number 4, but I'd also like to make sure that everybody understands that if our situation improves, which everyone hopes that it will, there's no reason we can't step back from this next year. This is just to get us in the right place for 2023's budget. We have to keep the boat in the ocean, and we have to not kick the can down the curve. So I hope everyone understands that this is something that has to be done, and it has to be done now. So.
No, I would just say that it's true. If we see some overall improvements in the macro economy, it definitely would be in our interest to look how we can ratchet these back as long as we're still able to get to that end point. Does I think that's still, it's a good objective.
Also, one of the most HOAs have a regular contribution of their membership into the reserve accounts. We've not had that. We've done it through new home sales. New home sales is waning for at least a moment. We have to put money back in reserves we're taking out to fix the hurricane repair. So we're ready for a question? Okay. All in favor of the motion to option 4, which is to increase the contribution to sales to $4,000 and assess each resident $78. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, I'm gonna do this in a different sequence. We've been through some real issues with landscaping, as we all know. I'm a DTE customer, many of you are. Are we happy with it? No. Did we maybe not perform exactly as we should have under contract? Yeah. We had to fix that. That's been fixed. They released us of all liability of any past claims. So now we start with a clean slate forward. We have to maintain the contract. We have the contract until March of 2024. But what I do want to do is start exercising some quality control. We propose to our landscape committee that they actually create objective measurements to measure our landscape. Those two expenses are the biggest expenses we have. They're huge, not just DT, but Crawford as well. And they've taken the challenge. They're going to get back to us with a set of objectives and measurement, and then we're going to hold them accountable. I want every resident that's on a DTE to learn how to fill out a work order. And we want to get those work orders into us. One of the suggestions of the landscape committee is to have those work orders, have a special email address for those to come. So we want to be tracking every way we can to keep them in line. If they aren't, we have the option to replace them. Okay? That's my comments about landscaping, and it's going to really increase the power and responsibility of the landscape committee, and they all stepped up and said they'd like to do this. Next, I want to talk about phase 3 lakes. We've had this issue before us for a long, long time, and have done very little about it, except talk. We need to find out what is the exposure, how much damage is there, and when we go after this, do we do it properly? We've been relying on an outside company to do our due diligence more and more. In my opinion, that's just a big mistake. We have some smart people in Sandoval, and so I'm making a proposal today to create a special committee, an ad hoc committee, to do that due diligence. Okay, let me read the motion. Create an ad hoc committee, litigation committee comprised of 5 members, of at least 2 of whom have substantial experience in the practice of law. The committee's mission would be to include 1, undertake meaningful due diligence regarding the advisability of asserting a claim against Taylor Morrison as to any design and/or construction defects in our phase 3 lakes, and make a recommendation to the board. Recommend legal counsel to assist the committee with that due diligence, including the identification of engineering experts to assess the magnitude of any defects and the cost to remediate them. The committee would be authorized to communicate with due diligence counsel. If a claim is to be asserted, work with litigation counsel to comply with the pre-suit dispute resolution and see if that can be settled. Another question is, Florida law says that if you're gonna enter into a lawsuit where the sum is in excess of $100,000, it requires resident approval. of a majority of a quorum of residents. So that's another question we need to answer. Today, we've been assuming that's not required. I'm not sure that that's the case, and we want our committee to really make that determination. I'd like, as part of this motion, I want to nominate the chairman of that committee, Dave Pillar, who's here in the back. Right? He's an attorney, retired, but he's still got his stuff. Bill Dunker is still a practicing attorney. Frank Hannigan, we know, is a very good financial advisor. He was a treasurer of Sandoval and in his career was controller of IBM. Frank Marzillo, a very good construction expert, and Stuart Seckler, who's been on our Lakes Committee, both on the Pond Watch and Record Committee for years. So I think we have our bases covered. I'd like to make a motion that this committee be created.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Under discussion, is this mic on?
Yeah.
Under discussion, I think our next step is really to contact the South Florida Water Management District. And I did, by email, let John and Todd know that I was not going to support this, because I really believe we need to find out. They issued the permits to Taylor Morrison. They inspect after the lakes are finished, and they sign off. So consequently, I'd like to know their position on our lakes before we enter into what could be a very expensive situation. And so I'm not going to support. I did tell John that I would abstain from a vote if that became necessary. But I would like to hear what some of the other board members' thoughts are on this committee.
I would want to say that creating this committee does not preclude Southwest Florida Water Management. Not at all. In fact, you can't hear?
Yes, well, you got plenty of mics there, right? Passing them around.
Oh, okay, sorry. I think that should be done as well. I think, and the thing I'm concerned about is an urgency. For instance, if it's required to have a vote of the populace, and it has to be done with a quorum, when's the last time we had a quorum? It was at election time. Our election is March the 9th. So I would task the committee to determine that that's required, because we'll need to get that vote out for our best opportunity to actually get a quorum. So to me, that's why it's urgent to get this going. We've been relying on Morgan to do our due diligence, and nothing has been done. And so I just
What's
think
the damage? Nobody knows what the damage
that's
is.
part of the issue, is to determine the damage. We don't know.
What's wrong with, we don't even know what's wrong with, I didn't know what you were talking about. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with what?
We deserve to know.
Yeah, what is the concern? We have no idea.
Okay, Dave, would you like to talk a little bit?
Well, I guess I could.
What?
You're told not to talk.
I'm sorry.
Dave, all right, yeah, take that one.
What's the question?
What's
What's
wrong?
it?
What's the issue? What's the issue? We don't know exactly.
Once you read
What's the issue?
it, let me record. We don't have 5 people talking. Yes.
I think we all have the same question.
Okay.
What exactly is the damage?
That's part of the problem. There have been some discussions with a couple of people who are pretty knowledgeable about the lakes, and the only thing that we've heard is that the lake banks may be too steep, and the compaction of the lake banks, the lake beds may not be proper. And we have to look into that and say, hey, how bad is the problem? How much is the fix? And, is it worth spending a lot of money to try to fix it? Can it be fixed?
Thank you.
But nobody knows. That's the problem. It's kind of murky as to what this problem is. And the first thing the committee would do is find out what exactly is the problem and how much is it going to cost to fix it.
That's the explanation, so thank you. Thank you for explaining. So is the duck in the water? Or is it No, I was just trying to explain.
Yeah, the lake banks, the slopes on the lake banks are supposed to be 4 to 1, meaning for every 4 lineal feet, you can only have 1 foot of drop. And there's an allegation that they're too steep, that the drop is more than a foot every 4 feet. I haven't the slightest clue as to whether that's correct, but I'm going to find out.
Can I ask one more question? Who is making that allegation? Who has, what's it doing?
Well, I wouldn't call it an allegation.
Say,
Yeah.
the person.
Scott D. Philippus and Jim Niehaus were the folks who met with Kathleen Pelosi and I believe John, and expressed those concerns.
Okay. Thank you.
We have a lot of rhetoric about the concerns, but not enough concrete data.
Thank you.
And so I just want to get some smart people to attack this thing and let us know what's happening. That's what this is all about. I'm sorry, Bill, you're up.
Thank you.
Done, everything I was gonna say has already been said, so we're all set.
Any more discussion?
Um,
About from on the board?
I've got a couple of questions.
You said you have three, but that's all right.
Well, it's past that. That way. I know that you indicated that, I think that you inferred, is what I'll say, my understanding might not be clear, that these committee members will have access to reaching out to Morgan & Morgan?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said to an attorney.
To an attorney, okay. So at this point, what has Morgan & Morgan given us? No. Okay, so, if.
Results.
It's on.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay, so if, the concern that I have is running up a bill unnecessarily. I think that it's clear that we need to identify one person on that committee that reaches out to, the legal team. And I think that you've got a couple of, more than capable people to do that, with the understanding of how that runs a bill for the association. This is, the lake banks in phase 3 have been a concern for, Todd, when was it we started talking about it? 6 years ago? So it's been a concern for quite some time. To Marilyn's point, I wonder, there's nothing keeping this committee from reaching out to the commission.
Of course not.
And I, like you said, I think that that's probably a great idea to, give them, kind of like say, yeah, this is what you need to do. My only concern is that they work in lockstep, which I think they will, and that they cover their bases as we go and cost the community as little as possible while they do it. Because, to use a phrase that I've heard in here before, I don't hear the people in here saying, I didn't realize there was a problem. What I hear them saying is that we didn't really know there was a problem. What is the problem? We don't really know that there is one. We want to make sure that there isn't one before we let this opportunity pass. That was what I was understanding from you, is that this is time sensitive and we have to get something on the books.
If in fact, this committee, as their first step, and I mean their first step, is to contact the South Florida Water Management District, it's not.
I don't want to give them that directive, I want them to talk to each other first. Let me just read some comments that the settlement with Taylor Morrison had released all claims concerning phase 1 and 2.
and carved out any construction defects for phase 3. So that's open to it. The precise nature and magnitude, this is not working.
It was, but no.
It was. The precise nature and magnitude of any defects in these construction of phase 3 remains murky. Until we do this due diligence, we cannot possibly intelligently pursue a lawsuit. The statute of limitations runs out this summer. That's why we gotta get cracking, okay? Any more discussion?
I just have 3 quick comments. It's time to quit speculating. It's time to get answers. And along with that, we need to be truly sensitive to the cost. This could be a runaway expense item if we don't get to the bottom line of this thing. So I think doing the due diligence, getting answers from this particular committee is the right thing to do before you can go further.
Ready for question? All in favor?
I have one more thing.
Yes.
Due to the questions that everybody has, that was sort of answered, because there's a lot more issues other than whatever Mr. Hillard said. There's catfish eating up the sides and armor catfish. There's other things that are going on with these lakes. So I think we should definitely be transparent, send out a report, an email, something explaining to everybody exactly what's wrong with these lakes and why that committee is going to be created today. Because I want to know. I want to know what's going on, where you know, how much money we're going to have to spend if those lakes keep coming up and have to start going into the lakes. You know, now that we're going to go forward and investigate this, now the ball's in our court. Now the liability is in us. So if we're going to do that, then I think we need to be transparent and put everything out there that is pushing this ad hoc committee through. That's it.
All those in favor?
Hey, can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Very sorry. Mr. Hillard, to Marilyn's point, can you give me a yes or no question, a response on, will you reach out to the Water Commission that gave the original approval to Taylor Morrison? Or is that even an appropriate first step?
The answer is yes. I'm all for reaching out to Southwest Florida Water Management District but only if we're not going to kick a sleeping dog. What we don't want to do is find out that we have a problem that we can live with. It isn't that the banks aren't in that bad shape, compaction isn't in that bad shape. But if we don't have a perfect 4-to-1 slope, and the city or the district comes back and say, you gotta fix it, because you let the cat out of the bag.
That's the key.
Then if I become convinced that we're not gonna kick any sleeping dogs, I'll run, not walk to the district.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Mr. Hillard, just as an FYI, it's the South Florida, not Southwest Florida, South Florida Water Management District. And Chauncey Goss, who lives on Sandoval, is the chairman that the governor has appointed for the last at least 5 years. He's been the chair. He looked after us when we went to him once before with the property that was going to be sold and where condos were going to be built. He provided excellent advice when Don and Al Roper and I met with him, and he really gave us good direction. That project didn't happen. That's why my very strong belief is that he again would be helpful to this community. But if you believe that our lakes are not in, that we don't have a problem, and therefore we won't have expenses, then in actuality, this ad hoc committee can give this report very quickly and maybe not address anything further. I just believed, since Chauncey is the chair of that district and helped us in the past, I thought he would do it again.
It's not my good work, so.
This one is, okay. All those in favor of creation of this committee, raise your hand, please. Opposed?
I'm the only one opposed.
Okay. Motion carried. Now, we have no more items on the agenda. We're fairly early. If residents would like to ask questions or make comments, I think we should open that up for a few minutes. But,
Gotta hear it first.
I'm sorry, okay. Meeting's adjourned.